It's the Draft Fellows coming at you live. Kyle and Andrew breaking down the drive. Prospects the roster, we got the flow. First round picks to the ones you don't know. Talk about the combine, skills on display. Who's rising up and who's falling away. Roster building like a GM in the zone. Kyle, Fellows, Andrew Mertig, they own the phone.
Hey, welcome back to the Draft Fellows podcast. I'm Andrew Mertig. That is Kyle Fellows, and together we are the Draft Fellows. Make sure you're checking us out on YouTube, or you can check out the audio version on your favorite podcasting platform. Kyle, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic and really looking forward to this show with you today. If people have been following along with us over the last couple of, months, we've really gotten into some mock drafts, but you have kind of been taking the lead on a lot of those and kind of going solo. And then I've given my thoughts on that as we've worked through it. Today, things are changing up a little bit and I get to be a part of that process. So really looking forward to the show that we've got on deck today.
Absolutely. So it's been all me and then your reaction to those mock drafts. And that's fine. People have liked that. We've gotten a lot of views, but I want to know what your thoughts are where these picks are going to go. And so today we're doing our first dueling mock draft where we go back and forth for each pick. And today we're going to do picks 1 through 11 and then discuss each pick. And Kyle, you have the honors of going first. So you're going to take the odd picks. I'm going to take the even. I'll try to keep track as we go. But you are on the clock with the Tennessee Titans. Feel free to do the jingle.
I was gonna say I'm not gonna try the jingle. Last time
I screw it up every time. Every time.
In my head, I can do it, and then I go to do it, and it sounds.
It's like da-na-na, na-na-na.
Yeah. That's the
No.
no, that's not it.
Yeah. Okay.
Da-na-na-na-na. Yeah, I can't do it. So we're gonna get the audio clip for that at some point in the future, and it's gonna be a lot better than what that horribleness was. Okay,
yeah, you got some copyright infringement problems.
Really, really bad. On the clock, Tennessee Titans right here. This is going to be fascinating because they've got a new GM in-house there, right? Old guy's out. Mike Borganzi. I got to get this right. Borganzi comes over from the Kansas City Chiefs. And so it's going to be interesting. I think the Titans know that they are probably a couple of years away from competing probably seriously, even within their own division with the way things are kind of gone. They know probably Will Levis is probably not the answer. So quarterback makes a lot of sense, but with them knowing that they're going to be probably back up here at the top of the draft again, probably next year, I think that they might actually do what Mike Borganzi has said in some of his press conferences, and they might just take best player available. He has said that they will not pass on a generational talent. Now, we can debate what a generational talent is in that term, but there is a player at the top of this draft that I do think that would be intriguing to many teams. But at the top here, the Tennessee Titans are going to start this out by going with Travis Hunter. And that's a little bit of a different take, but I kind of believe that they might actually do something like forego quarterback and try to build this thing in their minds the right way. And Travis Hunter is a player who can help you on offense. He can help you on defense. And I just think you have to think about what is going to bring this offense to life, and adding somebody in who can complement Ridley on offense, but then also give you that player who's going to play full time on defense with athleticism, playmaking, instincts that are super, super special. This is a player who played over 1,400 snaps in 2024 for his college team. Just an unreal special athlete. So I'm going to go best player in the draft, potentially Travis Hunter here, number 1 to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, and full transparency to the audience, we are not doing trades tonight.
Yes.
And so as a result, the Titans are going to stick and pick, and so is every other team. And really interesting. I think one of the things that we want to get away from is the chalky mock drafts, because we've seen every iteration where Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders go 1 and 2 in whatever order. And so I think this is a really interesting alternative. Now, if the Titans are going to go away from quarterback, there's probably somebody who's going to entice them with a trade up offer. But in this case, obviously that not being an option, Travis Hunter, really, really interesting. Now we slide over. I'm picking number 2 for the Cleveland Browns. And we know the Cleveland Browns need a quarterback. Deshaun Watson has not been the answer. And certainly his health is a question mark going forward for sure. So it probably is enticing to have whatever quarterback they want in this draft to be able to take at number 2. But I am also planning to go a different direction.
What?
And I'm going to have the Cleveland Browns taking Abdul Carter, the edge out of
Oh,
Penn
snap.
State. And
Okay.
the reason here is, one, Abdul Carter is a absolutely phenomenal prospect. I think he is a true difference maker off the edge. And I think lining him up opposite Myles Garrett is not only going to give you that next edge rusher to sort of take over as Myles Garrett starts to get closer to 30, and the aging that's going to go on with that, but it is going to give the Browns a signature on defense, and that is the pass rush. This is a really talented defense already. And by the way, in my scenario, the Browns are going to go ahead and sign Kirk Cousins this offseason,
Oh,
reuniting him with Kevin Stefanski. And that is going to give them their bridge quarterback, and they can worry about the rookie quarterback next year and beyond. But I think this is an opportunity to get back into being competitive, give yourself a really special player for the future, and set yourself up for both now and the later years.
Yeah, this is fascinating. We did not know that we were going to both go a little bit outside the box to start. And what's going to be fascinating when the real draft rolls around is if the NFL doesn't value the quarterbacks in this class quite as highly as in years past, would these teams try to get out in those situations? Would there be teams that would come up to try to get into those spots? But that's not going to happen in this mock draft because we're sticking and picking. But that is probably one of the most interesting things to watch is like, what will the value of these quarterbacks be perceived, not only right now in the process, but by the time we get to April, because that's going to be the pivot where we find out like what a team's going to be willing to do to get them. But I'm up at number 3. I've got the New York Giants here, and I am going to take a quarterback. Weird. We're finally going to take one, and it's going to be Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami. This is right now my top quarterback in the class. I think that it will stay that way. I don't anticipate that I'll flip Sanders into that spot, but I did like Sanders more than I thought I would when I got to his tape. But Cam Ward's still at the top for me. Just a really interesting player when it comes to his arm talent. I think he has a little bit more in that regard than Sanders does. Throws with incredible pace and layering on the ball, pretty high level understanding of the value of touch, and just does some nice things with his legs as well. He's not going to be someone who's going to run a ton, but he has the athleticism to escape and scramble when you need him to. So, and he's a bigger player. Like this is a player that is 220, 225 pounds. So it has a little bit more of a frame than Sanders does. So I do think that he has a little bit of a strange release. I cannot figure it out when you watch the film. There's almost like a shot put motion to the ball sometimes, and you're like, what is that? But it works. And I think that at the end of the day, that's like all you care about, that the ball gets there. And most of the time arrives with a good amount of accuracy. So excited to see him throughout the process to see if he can cement himself as quarterback 1, because I think all the tools are there. And when you're talking about the Giants, getting a player to marry up with Malik Neighbors and the new offense there in New York, I think is going to be really important. And getting him at 3 in this scenario, I think would be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think that is a really interesting pick, and I'm sure that the New York Giants would absolutely love if their choice of quarterback falls into their lap at 3 and they don't have to give up any additional draft capital to get that done. I have picked 4 with the New England Patriots, and the Patriots have all sorts of needs, but I think, protecting Drake May is probably number 1, but also providing Drake May with some weapons. I do think pick 4 is a little early to start the wide receiver run. Whoever your favorite wide receiver in this class is, if it's Tetairoa McMillan, I know Matthew Golden is getting a lot of push right now, but I think that's a pick for later. And so if the Patriots wanted to trade down, I think that makes all the sense in the world. We don't know what to make of this offensive tackle class right now. There is not currently somebody who is jumping out and saying, this is OT1 for sure. We don't know if any of those players are going to ascend into the top 5. But for me, since I can't trade down and I'm unsure exactly how the tackle class is going to shake out, I'm going to go with LSU tackle Will Campbell in this situation, because the Patriots have a need both at tackle and at guard. and you're getting a really, really quality player that you think can play tackle. And I always say with tackles, test them there, let them fail inside. And worst case, what you're going to have is probably a Pro Bowl caliber guard in a year or two. And so I think that Will Campbell makes all the sense in the world to pair up, start to get Drake May some of the protection that he so desperately needs.
All right, I got nervous that you were going to take my player here for a second when you were starting to be shaky about the offensive tackle class, but you stuck with the offensive tackle, which leaves my guy on the board for the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 5. And I've just kind of felt like this is probably the player that's going to be the steal of this first group of picks here, whether that's the top 5, top 10, and that's Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan. We know that the Jacksonville Jaguars just need a lot of talent. They've had some weird things happen the last week with getting Liam Cohen in there as the new head coach. And so I think there would be a temptation to get some offensive infusion here. But a player like Will Johnson, we've said on this show multiple times, typically is your cornerback 1. And with Travis Hunter's diverse skills, he's probably going to be off the board first. And so with Will Johnson sitting here at 5, I just can't resist it. So this is a player who can step in, has the ability to match up against the opposing offense's wide receiver 1 and really just be that alpha for your defense. He's a fluid athlete with some ability just to take over a game, honestly, in the secondary. Twitchier wide receivers might give him a little bit of trouble, but overall, I think Will Johnson is the total package at corner. His injury history is probably going to be something that NFL teams are really going to have to sort through, so that's going to be fascinating to see if shoulder and toe injuries that he's had the last couple of years become a problem throughout the process. But Will Johnson at 5, to me, is a really big value.
All right, and I have the Las Vegas Raiders at number 6, and there are a lot of things that I think make sense with how the board has fallen. I think Tetairoa McMillan would make a lot of sense because the Raiders need to get a weapon out wide to go with Brock Bowers. I think that if I didn't have some apprehension that I was going to get scolded by Raiders fans like I do every single time I pick this player, I would take running back Ashton Genty because the Raiders have a massive need at running back. Yeah. And I do think that fits in with new head coach Pete Carroll. And I think, it's kind of recreating that like beast mode Lynch backfield where you have just a super dynamic running back. I'm not going to do that though. I was thinking like, what made the Seahawks like super identifiable? And it's the Legion of Boom. And you just took Will Johnson, who I actually think would be a perfect fit in a Pete Carroll defense. The Raiders have a very good safety in Trevon Merrig, but they don't necessarily have a partner to go with him. And we are not doing chalk things tonight here, Kyle. I'm going to go with Georgia safety Malachi Starks. The Seahawks once took a safety very high with Earl Thomas, and him and Cam Chancellor became the best duo in the league. And I think Starks and Merrig would be a really, really fun safety duo in Las Vegas and start to get that defense into a dominating situation with Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins coming back off injury, and now a really, really powerful secondary.
All right. So I got nervous again. You're going to take my guy, but again, we're okay. We're okay. I'm at 7 with the New York Jets. And there are a couple different directions that the Jets could go, but they've got a new quarterback. Well, they might have a new quarterback, but they also have a new head coach in Aaron Glenn there. And Aaron Glenn is all about the defensive side of the ball, of course, and he's going to want to make a strength in the Jets defense a really big strength there. He's going to probably want to infuse that kind of culture. So I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the ball for new coach Aaron Glenn, and we are going to get him defensive lineman from Michigan. Mason Graham is going to go here to the New York Jets. If you, as good as the Jets defense is outside of Quinnen Williams, the defensive line needs a lot of help there. And Mason Graham is probably one of the safest picks in the entire draft. He can play all along your defensive line. He's going to come in and absolutely be a stud in the running game. And I think he has a ceiling as a pass rusher as well. This is a guy who's got top shelf character. He's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder. He wasn't highly recruited out of high school until the very end of high school. So a guy that plays with a lot of grit and kind of sounds like he would have been a decent Detroit Lion. And now that is now the culture that's headed to the Jets. So Mason Graham, the defensive lineman from Michigan, going 7 to the Jets.
I'm so angry with you because that was going to be my pick at number 8 for the Carolina Panthers, and now I'm reeling. And in total transparency, I think this is the part of the draft that gets really tricky because I do think that this is a better draft class than the perception was even 2-4 weeks ago. But I think that there is a big gap from players like 8 to 10, just depending on how you perceive them, into that next level of players. And when we're looking at the needs and how they line up for the Carolina Panthers, I don't know that those last 1 or 2 or 3 top-notch prospects match up with their needs really well. So I'm going to do something a little wild here. Normally, if I'm the Panthers, I'm looking for defensive line help big time. And I'm also looking for help in the secondary. Well, I don't like any of the perceived values there. This next level of edge players, I have too much uncertainty of what they are. So we're going to get a little wild tonight, Kyle.
Don't
the Carolina
do it.
Panthers are going to take wide receiver Tataroa McMillan, keeping him from their division rivals who are picking at 9.
So mad.
And they're going to help Bryce Young get that next level of weapon. I know Jalen Coker showed some things. Can't rely on late round wide receivers. Maybe he's great, maybe he's not. But I think you start to pair him with some of the other offensive weapons that they have. And I think that could look really good in Carolina. And we can address defense later on. So Panthers, Tataroa McMillan at 8.
I'm so upset with you right now.
Good.
Everything worked so well. It was what I wanted. Hold on. I know what I'm going to do, but I need to make sure it's not going to mess me up in a second here. Because I'm a GM for multiple teams here. Like, everything was perfect, and then he screwed it up. Okay. At 9, the New Orleans Saints are on the board, and they were going to take a wide receiver to be the identity of their offense, but we're not going to get too weird and take the next wide receiver. We're going to do something that makes sense. Jeez.
So you go offensive line?
No, I am going to go offensive line. That's where we're going. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't want to do something different. We're going to go Josh Simmons here, actually, which I don't know that that's chalk at this point. I haven't fully gotten into Kelvin Banks, and so I reserve the right to change my own. Will Campbell's interesting because he's really special. He's super young. He's, can play guard. He can play tackle. That makes sense that right now he's at the top of the board. But Josh Simmons is fascinating because he's played just 6 games this season. The tape is super, super good, but the medicals are going to be a monster for him, right? Because he only played the 6 games and he missed the toughest part of the Ohio State schedule as they went down the stretch, right? So he has really good tape, amazing tape against lesser competition, but he transferred from San Diego State, and penalties were a really big problem for Josh early in his career, but he really got those things cleaned up, has a really, really high ceiling as an offensive tackle in this class. So upset that I cannot go with the weapon here, but if we're going to try to get this Saints team turned around with any kind of, pace here, I think getting the offensive line right is going to be really important. And so sliding Josh Simmons in is a good consolation prize. We're going to go Josh Simmons at 9 to the New Orleans Saints.
I really like that. First of all, I do think Simmons is the best pure tackle in this class. Will Campbell, if he can stay outside, may be a better player. But I just think, the floor is so high with Will Campbell. I think Simmons is a little bit riskier, but you take a look at the Ryan Ramczyk injury, and then you take a look at Trevor Penny not really developing the way that they wanted to. Josh Simmons tackles a huge need. I think he's a great fit in New Orleans. I think he kind of fits what they like to do with their tackles anyways. That would have been my pick at 10. So,
okay.
I'm not going to get all mad about it like some people. But the Chicago Bears definitely need offensive line help. But I know people aren't going to like this.
Okay.
But Ben Johnson came from
Don't do this. Don't do this.
Detroit.
Don't do this.
Right? He came from Detroit. What did Detroit famously do with the 11th overall pick when they traded up to get it, and it shocked the world?
They took a running back.
They took a running back. And I'm just saying, this Chicago offense, you add in a dynamic threat at running back. I think Roshan Johnson can be a solid rotational back a la David Montgomery, but who's their Jameer Gibbs? Maybe not exactly the same skill set, but we are going to go with running back Ashton Genty out of Boise State. Chicago fans, I don't want to see this.
No.
So if you're upset about it, cool. I'm upset about it too, because this is going to make your offense ridiculous. And what Ben Johnson is going to be able to do with a great running back like Genty, I think honestly is going to give NFC North defensive coordinators a bunch of headaches. So that's where we're going to go. I hope that ruined your night. Kyle.
It did, actually. That is more upsetting than what you did before. So we are not friends right now. But I like it. It makes a ton of sense. And I've had that thought before that I'm like that. The Bears have a lot of different directions that they could go, and maybe you can make an argument that investing in a running back. But that's what people said about Detroit. Like, why would they burn that pick on a running back that high? And of course, Jameer Gibbs has been dynamic and explosive and everything that they needed in that offense. So I'm going to take San Francisco 49ers here at 11. And I think that this is where I was going to slot Josh Simmons in originally and kind of change things up here. But I'm going to go with the trenches, but the other side here. The San Francisco 49ers do need that heir apparent to Trent Williams, not a player on the board. Maybe Kelvin Banks will be there when this really happens, and that'll be something that's intriguing. But if you really look at the defensive line for the 49ers, not very good, right? Like Malik Collins, talented player, good at pass rush, not so good at holding up against the run. And they don't really have a lot of – this has gone from like a embarrassment of riches there to like kind of a barren cupboard in a lot of ways on the defensive line. And so we're going to I feel like this could be considered a little bit of a reach at this point, but I like the fit. And that's Kenneth Grant, the defensive lineman out of Michigan. This is a big player. He measures at 6'3", 339. And there are some concerns about like, what is his actual playing weight? Does he have to work to stay at that weight? But what he's able to do at that size is what's really, really impressive. Super dynamic athlete for how big he is right now. Like I said, better run defender than he is a pass rusher. Probably not going to be a presence on all three downs early in his career. But what's so exciting about Grant is the upside. What can he become as a pass rusher to complement what he already is in the run game? So just 21 years old, there's room for that growth and the solid floor as well as that run defender. So I like this for the San Francisco 49ers, getting back on track and kind of creating that dominant defense that they've had for so long there in San Francisco.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. That is going to wrap up our dueling mock draft for today. But just a quick recap. At number 1, the Tennessee Titans take Travis Hunter. At number 2, the Cleveland Browns take edge Abdul Carter. At 3, the Giants take quarterback Cam Ward. At 4, the Patriots take tackle Will Campbell. At 5, the Jaguars take cornerback Will Johnson out of Michigan. At 6, the Raiders take safety Malachi Starks. At 7, the Jets take defensive lineman Mason Graham. At 8, Carolina takes wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan. At 9, the Saints take offensive tackle Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. At 10, the Bears take running back Ashton Genty. And at pick 11, the San Francisco 49ers take Kenneth Grant. Shedeur Sanders didn't go in the top 11.
That is surprising.
That is very surprising.
Surprising. A little bit of a slip.
A little bit. So do you want to jump into our prospects, or you want to call it and we'll save it for next week?
Yeah, so we wanted to do something as we work through these mock drafts of just highlighting some players. We're not into maybe the depths of the draft process yet, but we want to introduce some of these players. Some of these guys are top level, and some of them we're going to get a little bit further into the weeds to introduce some players maybe you haven't heard of. But out of the gate today, my player is one that most have probably heard of, and that's Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, the wide receiver. Again, you've heard of him. He's been on the landscape for a long, long time there at Ohio State. He holds most of the receiving records there at Ohio State, and the national championship game highlighted him really nicely until, of course, the fumble there at the end. But T-Mac, Tetairoa McMillan, who made our mock draft, is actually not my wide receiver 1 in this class right now. And I'm not counting Travis Hunter as a wide receiver. He's a cornerback for me right now. T-Mac is a really good prospect, and there's a chance that he does become my wide receiver 1 by the end of this process. But when you grade Abuka, he really is just such a clean prospect. And maybe there's a bit of a ceiling with him. He's probably suited to be more of a wide receiver 2 than a wide receiver 1 in an NFL offense. And maybe that's how a player like T-Mac ends up being ahead of him as we go through this process. But Abuka is just so good at everything. Some guys are just ultra reliable, consistent, dependable, and that is Abuka. He's a master of his craft, professional route runner, and he's going to help the offense even when the ball isn't coming his way. So you love that. He's an impact blocker out there. I think we've kind of gotten bored with him as a prospect, but he's a player that's probably more dynamic, has more speed and explosiveness than maybe we even remember because we've been familiar with him for so long. He catches everything. Robert Woods has always kind of been my comp for him. I've seen JSN thrown around. That's an easy one to make because of the Ohio State connection. DJ Moore, I've seen that one. Ideally, though, all those players are probably your wide receiver 2 in your offense or your secondary target. But he's a really, really good football player and is one of my favorite interviews in this entire class. His coaches love him. And even though he's seemingly played at OSU forever, he's still just 22 years old. So I'm curious how high he can climb and how high he can go in the draft. But a team is going to get a really dynamic slot weapon who can absolutely make an impact on day one. So I love Emeka Egbuka and just continue to have a hard time not seeing him as a complete package at wide receiver.
Yeah, and for teams that or fans of teams that you don't really want to see them invest potentially a first round pick into a wide receiver too. I mean, think of the impact that Jordan Addison has had in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Right. And like clearly he's a wide receiver too, because when Justin Jefferson isn't on the field, they take a massive step down. But the way that he opens up that offense for everybody else is really, really impactful, helps relieve some of the pressure on your number one. So yeah. Love Egbuka as well. I am going to go with a cornerback out of LSU by the name of Zy Alexander. He's 6'2", 194-pound corner. So really impressive size, but also impressive length and athleticism. His movement skills are very notable. He has the ability to transition smoothly, match routes effectively, even at full speed. Unlike a lot of longer corners, he doesn't have to downshift to cut in and out. In pass coverage, he utilizes his length to control receivers in press situation. He usually is able to maintain tight coverage downfield. He also demonstrates good ball tracking abilities, allowing him to contest catches effectively. Against the run, he shows physicality and a willingness to engage, so coaches are going to love that. He comes up quickly, support and delivers secure tackles, and he targets the legs of ball carriers. His play strength is really evident because he's able to take on blockers, rare trait amongst college corners. He can disrupt plays in the run game. I think there is a little bit of room for improvement in like landing his punches during press coverage. I think that can get a little sloppy. He needs to enhance his effectiveness at the line of scrimmage overall. But I'm super comfortable with him as a high day 2 pick. I think with the right development, he has the opportunity to be a number 1 corner in the NFL. So this is a guy I think a lot of people probably haven't heard of at this point in the draft cycle. I think he is going to shoot up draft boards. I wouldn't be surprised if he got picked late first, but I think if this is a guy you take in the second, or like if he falls in the third, like in a couple of years, you're going to be like, wow, we got a great value.
Yeah, absolutely. NFL teams are going to eat up a cornerback that's 6'2", 194 pounds. Absolutely.
And there's a few of them in this class. So
yeah.
Exciting to know about that if your team is looking for one of those long corners. But I think Alexander's the kind of guy who can probably be scheme versatile because he does have the, like he's not just stuck as a cover 3 guy.
Yeah. No, it's going to be fun. I think you kind of said it earlier, like this is a class that has kind of been looked down upon for like a couple months, I think, as we've kind of gotten into this. But the farther we get into this, we're finding more of these players that are kind of that fringe first, early second, day 2 player that you're like, man, like there's some really good talent in this class that maybe needs a little bit of development, but in a couple of years, we could be looking back and saying, actually, the 2025 class was actually a very talented group of players. And so we're just having a lot of fun getting into it and sharing that with you here on the podcast. Of course, we went through those first 11 picks in our mock draft. We'll be back with our next episode. We're going to work through picks 12 through 23. So come back for that, and we'll continue these prospect breakdowns as well. So stick with us. But thanks for joining us on the show today. Make sure you like and subscribe, share the show with a friend. But from the draft room to the gridiron, the Draft Fellows have got you covered. Until next time, stay tuned and stay in the game.
Kyle got the insight, Andrew brings the heat. Breaking down the roster every single week. Catch us on the podcast, we coming through your speakers. Top picks for practice squad, we got the seekers. Team dynamics, contracts, and the trades. From the draft day excitement to the accolades. Draft Fellows on the track, we gone strong. Analyze the plays, we can't be wrong. From the 40-yard dash to the longest throw. We talking pro ball, yeah, you know.